Welcome to the Speed League podcast from Southern California. I'm Kelly Hansen. You can play free season-long fantasy Supercross, MotoGP, F1, whatever motorsport you're into. It's totally free. Just get a group of 4 friends together at speedleaguefantasy.com. We're talking about the Supercross from Indianapolis Triple Crown today. I'm here as always with the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Berkman. What's up?
How's it going, everyone? Yeah, we just saw the Triple Crown, and actually, these races have really been growing on me. I'm like, when they started this whole thing like a few years ago, it kind of threw me off at first, and I wasn't really big on them. But like now, it seems like the races get like pretty interesting towards that third race, and I actually kind of like that now. It's a cool little thing to mix it up, kind of halfway through the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a little split. And I mean, generally, I like sort of the purity of like the regular race where, you're going to do the heat races and then it's just all on the line for the main event. But at the same time, when I was watching the other night, like the first races come on and it's like, oh, shit, I get to see everybody instantly. Like, this is cool.
Yeah. Uh, And especially kind of like when there's so much parity going on, like in the like 250 class, it's like different winner every single race, so it's all just up in the air of like who's winning, who's going to do this. I mean, for Jett Lawrence kind of ruined the whole parity thing for us in the 450 class, but at least in the 250s, everyone all over the place, people getting first and then getting you know crashing, getting way back there. So it's cool to add a little dynamic to it. So I enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, should we lead off with our fantasy matchup? Because I squeezed one out to beat you on this one. I feel bad for you because you keep having to come on the podcast, losing to me. But I really actually thought you had this one.
I like should have had this one. I mean, like, granted, me and you both didn't really have a good week. Like, it like kind of burns more if like I would have beat anyone else in the league besides you, and I lose to you by like 2 points. I mean, that really stings. But we both kind of did shitty, but I just did just shittier than you. And I could blame that a lot on like Benny Bloss because I had Ferrandis subbed out. He was not in, obviously. So I thought that Bloss was going to be my savior, and he got last place, 0 points, and I lost by 2.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was like a rough week, but it shows like predictions. I mean, you got 2 dead on predictions in the 450s to bump up 10 points total. So I mean, really, that's what won it for you was those like predictions.
Yeah, and we keep talking about this, the prediction points being huge, and this was another time where I mean it definitely was the decider. But I mean, I can't have that much pride for this week because I would have lost to anyone else in the league that I was playing besides you. I mean, John actually almost beat Whole Shot King. Scrub and triples. Our last place guy in our league was 8 points away from beating Whole Shot King, which that would have been a cool upset.
Well, when Jett scores 45 points, I mean, I feel like
Oof.
that like kind of puts you in a good like position. Obviously, he had him predicted first, so he like got an extra 5 points on top of the 40 points Jett Lawrence scored from all of his wins in the Triple Crown gets you 3, and then whole shots in the Triple Crown gets you 3 as well, as opposed to the 5 normally in a like normal week. But yeah, freaking Jett with the 3 wins and 2 out of 3 whole shots. It was quite the dominant night by Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, Jett, it's so impressive. I mean, like he was so I mean, this track was the track itself, like kind of like we talked about last week, was again kind of one lined, a lot of 90-degree corners, difficult to pass. And I mean, that in combination with the Triples Crown format, it was just consistency is key. You have to not make mistakes. And we saw, I mean, especially a lot when we get to the 250 class, like it was, whoever makes the least mistakes was the one who ends up being on top. But yeah, I mean, Jett just kind of mistake free all night and fast. That's a killer combination.
Yeah, and like really, Jett now essentially has won 6 mains in a row. I mean, if you count the like Triple Crown as 3 mains, which it is, pretty much on paper. I mean, he's won just so dominant in these past 6 mains, for his now like 3rd win in a row. And he is by far the I mean, so much faster, so much smoother, so much more consistent than like everyone else that it looks like he is riding against people that aren't even in his league. I mean, he has
Yeah,
separated
yeah,
himself from everyone else, and it's like not even really close anymore. I mean, it seems like really,
yeah.
like different people, are like good at like different tracks. Like if there's a long whoop section, or if there's a certain type of style that like Webb or Sexton or like Roczen might be good at. That's like the number two guy battling with Jett, but it's always Jett and like whoever's gonna step up. Um, I mean, Jett really isn't ever just like left in the pack. Now, oh yeah, Jett fourth place. It is always Jett and whoever's the second fastest for the night.
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to struggle if he gets a bad start, but he's getting such good starts all the time, too. I mean, he got 2 out of the 3 hole shots in the Triple Crowns and is just like unassailable. So, I mean, Roczen was really, really good this race and like had explosive speed and all that. And I want to talk about that quickly. But before we move on from Jett, I mean, if you have him on your team in fantasy, which neither of us do, but I mean, he's prediction 1 at this point, right? Because I mean, he's either going to get first or something weird and bad is going to happen and he's going to crash and he's going to be way further away than that. But you're not going to predict him fifth or something like that. He's a first place prediction.
Definitely next week, prediction 1. I mean, like you said, he's probably either going to crash and like be like either like off the podium or just barely scrape a third, or he's going to win by 7 seconds. So he officially has been crowned the first place prediction guy, which is a very hard goal to reach, but Jett's done it.
Yeah, and he was having a fair amount of those rookie mistakes at the beginning of the season, finishing off the podium, this and that. But I mean, that stuff's getting cleaned up. I mean, I'm not even really betting on that happening so much anymore. Not to say that it couldn't, but I mean, yeah, you put him first with a pretty high degree of confidence.
I did expect Jett's kind of rookie season to look kind of more like Hayden Deegan's, where, he's fast, obviously has the speed, but just, making terrible, terrible mistakes. I mean, Jett just isn't making those. And I know that going from like 250s to like 450s, I guess, isn't as big of a leap coming from, not even in the main Supercross race to being that like 250 rookie. But still, I mean, Jett's handling it so well. Like, I know that he had some like issues in the beginning of the season with kind of like an attitude adjustment he like needed to have and just like kind of step it up in like different areas. But he has been like riding clean, riding well, riding fast. And I mean, he has a long, illustrious career ahead of him. It's going to be fun to watch.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean, he's sort of proven throughout his, relatively short career so far that he can very quickly, if he is, making mistakes or, behind or whatever it is, evolve and adapt very quickly. And I think that's what we've seen is, we're already halfway through the season and it looks like he's cleaned up a lot of those rookie issues and is just the guy. He's got the confidence. He's good to go. So, yeah, if you got Jett and Lawrence on your team, you're obviously happy at this point. But Roczen, really, really good. I mean, great starts. He was up there. He got 1 out of the 3 hole shots. With Jett getting the other 2, but was like fighting with Jett early in them, had a lot of just explosive speed, especially right at the beginning of the races. Even if Jett would be ahead, he like made a few passes on him, would get in front of him and lead for a while before Jett inevitably got him at the end. But like a really, really good night for Roczen.
Roczen looked as fast as I've seen Roczen look in a long time. I mean, he was on it on the starts. I mean, just had his lines. He rode as well as he could possibly ride, and it still wasn't good enough. And it has to be a little disheartening. I mean, I know that obviously second place to go 2-2-3. I mean, you have to be absolutely stoked, but just I mean, like Roczen can't do any better than that. It's not like, he made some like mistakes or, oh man, if I could only fix this, I could beat Jett. I just don't think that Roczen has the speed to beat Jett. And also, I mean, I know that you were saying they were kind of battling back and forth, which they were a few times because it seems like they were either like 1 or 2 for like every single race. But a few times it looked like Roczen kinda looked back and saw Jett and then kinda let him by, kinda, sort of wanting to play some like damage control where he didn't want to get taken out by Jett and then, end up falling back and not like securing that like second spot. But it just seemed like Roczen knew Jett was faster and said, okay, I'm just trying to freaking ride my line in front and just pull out as much time as I can so that someone like Sexton or Webb doesn't pass me. But he always knew that the inevitable was going to happen and that Jett was going to end up passing him.
I didn't think you were going to say that he was letting him pass him because I didn't really see that. What I was thinking more is that Jett knew he was going to get past him, and like Jett was being very patient and ready for whenever Roczen makes a little slip up, he was going to go by. But I mean, I don't think Roczen is letting him by. I don't think anybody was letting him by. But at the same time, I do see in like the post podium interviews and stuff, people like Roczen, Webb, whoever, just kind of saying, "Hey, man, I feel like I rode really, really good tonight." And I mean, Jett is just faster, and they've all almost kind of just come to terms with the fact that, like, hey, I'm not having issues right now. I feel like I'm riding excellent. I feel comfortable on the bike. Everything's good. Jett is just kind of on a different level.
So I guess different people can see different things. And obviously, Roczen didn't pull over to the side of the track and give him, hey, man, come on by. But in my notes, I have in like race 1 that it looked like Roczen saw Jett was coming and just totally let him by. And then even Ricky Carmichael commented like, oh yeah, some guys, if they see a guy like totally um, charging behind him, they will let them by to like see their line and see where they're gaining so much time on him. And it looked pretty clearly that he like, let him by. And then in race 2, the like same exact thing happened. And I actually thought, I was like, man, does like Roczen have Jett on his Speed League fantasy team predicted first, and he wants to get that 5-point bonus there? Because I'm like, maybe they didn't let him by in the sense of, okay, like, come on. But I think that, like we said, Roczen just knew that like Jett was going to get him and didn't want any, tanglement to happen and, freaking Roczen go down.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine him not putting up a huge fight. I mean, especially, Roczen and Jett, I think, have like a pretty good relationship. They don't have any kind of rift like maybe Anderson does with Jett or something like that, where he's going to fight him super hard. And, Roczen's a veteran. He knows that, if, Jett goes by him and he just tries to blast him in a corner or do something, like this is just going to be worse for everybody. And so the best thing he can do is, if Jett's got the line on him, stick with him as much as he can. Try and maybe hope Jett has a rookie mistake or something like that. But it did not happen. Yeah, Jett was gone. But really good ride from Roczen. I think you had him predicted 4th, ended up 2nd. Roczen's popping off some good rides these days. I mean, honestly, Indianapolis apparently it's just one of his places. He won it last year, looked really, really good there. It's just that's kind of his vibe, helps too. It wasn't enough to give him enough home field advantage to beat Jett, but helpful. Roczen likes Indy.
Yeah, and I did, think about bumping him up a little bit, but just Webb has been super consistent, and I have Webb also. And we were talking here last week on the podcast that, Webb's pretty much locked in as like a number 2 prediction, because that's, kind of seems like he's the second fastest guy to Jett. And I know Sexton's always mixed around there, but I just thought, okay, I'm going to play it safe and have Roczen 4th, because really, if you look at his like finishing positions throughout the season, he like has those random weeks when he like, wins in like Glendale, or he, is like battling with Jett in like Indy, but then he'll have like an 8th in like Arlington and a 12th in like San Diego. And it just seems like he isn't consistent. So he's hard to predict. And you just kind of got to kind of like, hedge a bet in the middle, really, for like a guy like Roczen, unfortunately. So he doesn't get me too many prediction points.
Yeah, and Webb, I mean, I totally agree. Is seems like he's very consistent. Has been on the podium a lot and like up in that 2nd position. But man, a bad race this one. I mean, he had some bad luck and I mean, just kind of some issues too. So I mean, the first race he came together with a lapper. I think it was Cade Clayson, and like just kind of a a bummer little thing that honestly wasn't Clayson's fault. He was trying to look out for someone coming from behind him and like got cross-rutted and came over, and then it just happened to like flip Webb off the bike in the between the two lanes. And so from the first race, I think he got an eighth or ninth or something. He was like, kind of, okay, the win's off at this point. That's how Triple Crowns work. But then in the second race, Sexton, who ended up finishing third, had a charge and like came past Webb along with like Plessinger and Anderson. And then Webb just kind of didn't seem like he had much for it. I mean, Plessinger actually passed him too. So Webb kind of had a weird, like, didn't have a ton of speed.
I was worried that like Webb might have got a little hurt because I saw that same thing, and like Webb normally isn't a guy that just lets that happen. So I was like, man, I hope that little crash with like Clayson, he didn't tweak a wrist or break a finger or like something like that, because it's like really that just set the tone for the whole night, and it really didn't end up like we're used to seeing Webb. So I was definitely disappointed to see my like really top 450 guy in a like head-to-head battle with Kelly, kind of coasting around the track, not doing what we're used to seeing. But hopefully next week he'll be back in Webb form.
I would expect him to also. I mean, that crash, was kind of just like sad the way that it kind of panned out, but it didn't look like it was anything that, would have hurt him. So I mean, speaking of Sexton, who went by him, Sexton in that race too, like, I was talking about this is kind of a difficult track to pass, but he made it happen in that race too. He was like flying by guys. Again, past Plessinger, Webb, and Anderson in that second race. Obviously started too far back to actually catch up with the leaders and compete with them. But I mean, then the third race, actually passed Roczen and was, the only guy to break into that top two besides Jett and Roczen for the whole night. So actually a pretty good night of racing for Sexton.
Yeah, and he's really kind of come into form these like last three races with like two podiums and a fourth for the last three. And like he like had a rough start of the season. I mean, it like seemed like almost around like the whole San Diego, Anaheim, Detroit, he like wasn't finishing where everyone thought that he was like gonna fit. Detroit he got second, but then in Glendale he got ninth, and it just seemed like he was super inconsistent, wasn't being where we all thought he would. But now that he like rattled off a 3.43, I like think that he is like one of those guys that is going to be up there battling for like podiums for the rest of the season. He's like really figured out, I guess, whatever he like needed to figure out, and he's riding more like the Chase Sexton than I was expecting to see.
Yeah, but still not competitive for wins. I mean, no one really is with Jett right now, but yeah, I mean, his last races, looking better with a 3.43, but not even a second place. So, I mean, not even at the top of the heap that's fighting for second place right now. So, which is not really what we expected to see from Sexton. I mean, champion from last year, and I mean, last year, obviously before Jett, but generally the fastest guy on the track all last year. And then makes the switch to KTM, and now, I mean, usually getting beat by, I mean, not only Jett, but someone like Webb or Roczen on a good night or something like that.
I mean, Sexton will have his nights coming up. I mean, we saw Tomac battling with Jett, and then now Tomac is like not even competitive one bit.
Oh man.
I'm freaking last night.
I have a note. I have a note for Tomac. Was Tomac racing? Because I didn't even like see him barely at all on the broadcast or anything. At some point in one of the races, I looked and he was like in 11th place, which I know I think he made some passes and finished better than that, but like nowhere.
And it seems like almost like strategically the like broadcast, when Tomac is like having one of his off nights, they like purposely don't even talk about him, don't even mention him, so that a like semi-regular viewer of Supercross doesn't even see how shitty Tomac is actually doing. And I mean, it's just so weird to me how like he could battle with Jett for wins one week and then just be like down there battling with 10th to like try to make top 10. And it just doesn't even make any sense to me. And I
Well, the
can't put
week
my
that you
finger
saw
on
him
it.
battling with Jett is Daytona. I mean, that's his track. That's like his best place he's going to be. So, I mean, I know he had, one or two other good races before that, but yeah, he's not there right now. He doesn't have it figured out. And I know he's bummed. He's trying, and this is not the comeback season that he wanted to have after, the heartbreak at the end of last year, but he's not there, and it's not just Jett that's beating him. It's a lot of people.
But it does kind of pain me to like say that because he has 4 second place finishes this year. So it almost seems like we're giving him uh I mean, it's a little unjust to say, okay, Tomac's washed because when you've got 4 seconds on the year, you are, a like good rider and are competitive. But it's just the way that he goes back and forth week to
Yeah,
week.
I look. I'm not gonna say, oh, Tomac sucks at riding a motorcycle, but we set the bar incredibly high for Eli Tomac, as we should, because of, I mean, his history of just being blazingly fast and on his on nights being able to dominate everybody, and that's not the Tomac that is here this year.
Where do you predict Tomac next week? Seattle,
Man, I
going
was just
back
going
to
to
the
ask you the
West
same
Coast.
question, and I mean, I'm glad that I don't have to actually, you know, make that final decision because it's Whole Shot King that's got him on his team. But oh man, after the last four races, 2-2, and then 7-7, maybe a 5 or 6, honestly, for Tomac, I would say.
So there's like a few ways to like go about this. And like normally I am like one of the guys that just, kind of goes in the middle and says, okay, 2-2-7-7, I'm going to go fifth or sixth. But it honestly seems like it's a trend where you either need to predict him second or third or eighth.
Yeah,
I mean, those are the like
it's true,
only two options.
yeah, and it would be so sad to put an eighth on Tomac, but if that's what it is, that's what it is, and you should be realistic with your predictions. But also, a big thing with Tomac, I would say, is to watch qualifying beforehand. There's some people out there like Aaron Plessinger, sometimes even Cooper Webb, that like kind of qualifying is not their thing, and they might be, back in 14th or something, and then in qualifying, and then come out and podium or win in the night show. Tomac, you generally get a pretty good idea of if he's got speed at that track during qualifying. So if you see him up in the top few, I would say it's probably I mean, again, not always, but usually a pretty good bet that he's going to be competitive.
Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Don't take too much weight in like qualifying, but it does mean something for sure.
You know what? I'm going to eat my words right now because he qualified second for
Oh,
Indianapolis
well,
overall. So what's going on, Tomac? I don't know. You qualify second. I mean, you have potential speed at the track. I mean, obviously that track was drastically different by the end of the third race of Triple Crown. It deteriorated heavily, but I mean, usually that's not something that's a problem for Eli Tomac. So I don't know. That is a hard prediction to make.
so I'm going to skip over a few people. I mean, if you want to go back, feel free. But Justin Barsha with an 8th place finish. Frequent listeners of the podcast may recall that he was my like deeper pick of the week last week, and I actually said that I believed he was going to get his best finish recently, and I would predict him in 8th. And he ended up doing just that, with that like veteran know-how on those triple crowns. He ended up going 7-9-6, which is a great outing for Barsha. I was like watching him, on the little side where it like shows everyone. I was like keeping an eye on Barsha because I wanted him to do well. I mean, Barsha has like been one of my like favorite riders for a while, and I wanted him to see do well, and he really pulled it off and looked good.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I've got Barsha on my team. He was one of the guys that I picked up really early in the draft, assuming he's in past years just been a really consistent up there, sometimes even top 5 consistent guy. And then just the beginning of the season, it was a shit show. But I mean, looking at his recent results chart here, 18th, 14th, 11th, 9th, 8th. I mean, just straight, upward trajectory there, and it's really awesome to see. And I actually now feel pretty confident in giving him a prediction in that, lower top 10, the, eighth place, ninth place, something like that. I had him predicted ninth, so I got one off on this one, but it's good news for Barsha that he's up there. But I mean, can that trajectory continue? I mean, is Barsha going to break into the top 5 this season? I'm not ready to say that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that really this is probably his ceiling this year, which wasn't his like projected ceiling preseason, but it just is like the fact of the matter. I mean, I'd say eighth is probably like the best that he's going to do. He might, squeeze in like a seventh if like there's a few crashes, but I would say every week, probably like a ninth or eighth prediction for the rest of the season's probably where he should be.
Yeah, I mean, on average, I would agree with you. But that being said, I could definitely see Barsha. I mean, definitely pulling off sixth, seventh places here and there, and even a top 5. If conditions are right, I think Barsha still got that speed. He was getting good starts at the Triple Crown too. If he continues to make improvements, it's still Justin Barsha. But yeah, I mean, going forward, I'm probably going to next week, but probably prediction 8, where he finished this last week, I would say.
Yeah, like you do have to be a little careful on that because I mean, yes, he's on a good like upward trajectory, but it only takes 1 week and he's right back there in 11th or 12th. So I mean, almost you just got to cross your fingers. That's the season that he's had, and
Well, I
hopefully.
mean, it's not to say that some bad shit can't happen one race, but I don't expect. I judged on his recent performances, I think he's actually made improvements and strides that will get his consistency up to a higher level and like a better position. So, I mean, yeah, Supercross is chaotic and different things are going to happen, but I think he's in a different place now than he was even a few weeks ago. And yeah, expect them to see him in that top 10 for sure.
So is there anyone else you want to talk about? I mean, like really, there's some like big names down here, but I mean, no one that really, in like, my opinion, deserves to take any airtime. I mean, everyone's just kind of coasting around down here.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Plessinger had a pretty cool race in the second race. Him and Anderson were battling the whole night.
Every
Um,
single race, it was funny.
yeah, it was cool. I mean, that second race, Plessinger had a really, really good race. But his starts were like a little bit off. Um, I don't know. I had Plessinger, I mean, at a certain point this season predicted, third, fourth, something like that when he was really performing high. I dropped it down to sixth, got a dead on prediction for him this time. That might be a little bit of what's expected for AP going forward, but I'm still good. I mean, AP finishing close to that top 5 and battling with some of the top guys is cool to see. But anyways, yeah, you want to talk some 250s because there was action there.
Yeah, there was. Let's move on to the 250s. Again, something that we called on the podcast. I said that McAdoo is due for a win. I mean, he got 3 seconds in a row. And like Vial is fast. He like has the speed. He's, definitely the like surprise of the like 250 class. But he's not in like my eyes yet one of those dominant first place every week guys. And I knew that McAdoo was hungry, and I said that I think McAdoo is going to win this Triple Crown, and he did. And it wasn't easy. It's not like he just ran away with every race and went 1-1-1 like Jett, but he was super consistent, good starts, and he pulled it off.
Yeah, he did what he needed to do. And I mean, honestly, I think Vial probably still, ever since he's come up and, won that first race and been really strong. I actually think Vial was probably the fastest guy on the track. But this, like we talked about before, this track and this Triple Crown format were just so consistency dependent, and uh, you cannot make mistakes. And Vial made the mistakes, and McAdoo did not.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Who is your favorite for the rest of the season? Do you think Vial has an edge over McAdoo?
Yeah, I think it's between those two. It's really hard because I mean, yeah, McAdoo has definitely had the consistency. I mean, so many seconds, and then now getting the win for this one, that's really strong. But I mean, I see Vial emerging. I mean, it seems like he's really found his speed, and with a few wins under his belt, has like the confidence and feels like he belongs in that battle for the wins and for the championship. Gun to my head, I would probably pick Vial right now, but it's close enough that I'm excited to watch the rest of the season because I think these two are going to duke it out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely gonna be exciting, and it's cool to actually see two, you know, championship contenders duke it out because Jett, as I totally ran away with that in the like 450. So I'm glad that at least in the because it seems like a lot of times 250s. I mean, there's like one fast guy that is just the outright favorite and like runs away with it every week. And I do feel like if Faulkner was still in, like he would be the favorite. But I mean, obviously he's not. Um, but yeah, it's just gonna be fun to watch. But I think that I have an edge on McAdoo. My money's on Mr. McAdoo here.
Yeah, I mean, both of those people will be. I mean, that's an exciting story for them to win a championship. You know what I mean? McAdoo's been doing this for a long time, and I mean, honestly, even just to deliver it for the Pro Circuit Kawasaki team that's been without a championship for so long and is one of the best teams in 250 Supercross, to be able to deliver that for them. And not only that, but to do it in a class where they lost Austin Faulkner this season, and then he can still pull it off for the team would be so cool. But then, I mean, Tom Vial too. You know, the story of the Frenchman coming from Europe, from the MXGP circuit, and in his second year in Supercross, coming and doing something like this is really awesome to see too. So, no, I'm hoping for some good battles, and Deegan is going to mix it up with him in there for sure too, as we saw. Him winning one of the races last night, but Deegan still, he's got a little too much danger in him, unfortunately, I think this season to really, it seems like, push for this championship.
Yeah, and like seeing him, blame everyone else for his issues and, like coming after different people. And then him just all by himself without anyone bumping him, anyone, like causing him to he just runs into a tough block and causes a massive pileup of, a lot of top guys behind him. And it's like so badly I wanted to see, like Hymus or like one of those guys to like go and just kick over his bike and be like, oh, hey, freaking little shithead, that was all your fault. But again, it's like
You
just
know,
kind of that.
you have Deegan on your team, right? I just want to clarify that this is the best guy on your 250 East team.
Oh, true. I mean, obviously, for like personal reasons, I want to see him do well. Maybe I would have freaking beat you this week if he wouldn't have ran into that tough block. But a little part of me kind of enjoyed that. I'm like, not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, look, adversity like that will help this, cocky 18-year-old mature and, I mean, come back super strong next season. Because, I mean, yeah, say what you want about him, yelling out, welcome to the danger zone on the podium. But, like, the kid has serious talent and speed. He's very fast.
Very fast, and like seeing him crash and then get back up and then haul ass and end up getting a sixth. I mean, he
Yeah.
is really fast, and I will not take that away from him. But I mean, yeah, like we said, and like everyone's been beating a dead horse all week. When he just grows up a little bit, he'll be a little more likable, and I think that he too has a great career ahead of him, and I'm excited to see it unfold.
Yeah. Pierce Brown, fourth place. He's now gone this season 5.55 and now 4.4. So drum roll for what next week's or next race's result's going to be. Because, yeah, it's not East next week. It's going to be back to West. But Pierce Brown appears to have made a small stride up from fifth place to fourth place. Just quietly. Putting down good results and still, I mean, sitting right there in the championship hunt.
He made his first mistake all season in the like first race though. I mean, he like did go down, kind of had a little lapse of judgment and like, ended up on the dirt, and he got a 12th in the first race. I mean, if he wouldn't have like done that and like finished in, fifth or fourth like he has all season, he would have ended up on the podium. But he did like make that mistake and just stayed in fourth. But I mean, he is super consistent. He's like a guy that I would love to have on my team because he's easy to predict, and you're almost guaranteed to get 3 or 5 prediction points with him every week. But yeah, he had a podium and he threw it away on that first race.
That's a bummer. But yeah, I mean, he's right up there. I mean, he is, let's see, 11 points out of the championship lead. So I mean, it's funny because I don't really see him competing with like Vial and McAdoo. I don't necessarily think he's honestly a championship contender. But I mean, we're 5 races in and he's right there. So who knows?
Consistency is everything. Okay,
It sure
moving
is.
on to someone that I'm pissed off about is like Cody Schock in fifth. I
Okay, this is like maybe one of the top rides or stories of the whole night.
Yeah, like, I had him subbed in on my team, and then okay, freaking broken collarbone's gonna be out. He like went in and like had to get all these X-rays, and it's broken. So I release him.
Surgery.
Yeah, yeah, surgery. And then he like, oh no, fuck it, I'm gonna race. And then like Kelly ends up picking him up, and he gets a fifth overall with a broken collarbone. I mean, that is just freaking guts from like Cody Schock. That was really, really impressive, and it was guts from Kelly to pick him up and swipe him away from me. But yeah, it was crazy to see him riding around with a broken collarbone, and he even like crashed kind of hard at a certain point and freaking picked up his bike like a badass, hopped back on, and finished the race. So he's a freaking bona fide badass in my book.
Yeah, it's so crazy, and it's like I almost I want to say, oh my gosh, what a beast, and it's so beast mode. But at the same time, like you watch him, it's like it looked like it wasn't even bothering him at all. Like he was just riding it 100%. I mean, yeah, finishes in fifth place to hold down fifth in the championship on a non-factory bike. Like, yeah, Cody Schock is absolutely murdering it. So, I mean, yeah, fully expect him to continue kicking ass when we come back to East. Like it's really, really awesome.
And
Um,
then yeah, I was gonna
Go
move
ahead,
on
Ed.
down to Nick Romano, who freaking came out of nowhere. Like I actually had him on my team at a certain point and ended up dropping him after, he went 14th, 12th, 13th, DNF. And then just like fucking out of nowhere in the Triple Crown gets a whole shot and ends up um, sixth overall. Um, I mean, that's just freaking out of nowhere.
Is this just good starts? Because I actually feel like I've seen Romano up at the front getting whole shots or close to whole shots a lot of this season, and then just kind of falls back as the main events go on. But if you're a good starter and you got a bunch of short races to decide it, maybe that's a huge benefit for someone like him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but even overall, like all of his races, 8, 10, 5. I mean, that's better than he finished all season long. And I get that starts, do like matter a ton in this, but I mean, just like every race, he was finishing better than he should. So I mean, that like could be someone that someone could like potentially target, but like then again, maybe it was just like the shorter races. He's a decent starter. So then once the format goes back to the same old, he's not going to be one of the top guys. But I mean, he like really looked worth to be on
Yeah,
someone's team.
because I was going to ask, where do you predict him? But the question before that is, do you pick him up? Because
Yeah.
he's available in our league right now. Nobody's got him on their team. He's on a factory, Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha bike. I mean, it's potentially the best team in 250s. But I mean, in Speed League points scored, he's 14th this season. Behind Marshall Welton, Jeremy Martin, a few of those guys that are further back. So I mean, is he worth a pickup? And if he is, where do you predict him in the next race?
I would say that he's, if you definitely need someone and like you're in a pinch, I mean, he's like a sub guy. I don't think that he's a guy that, you should just always have on your team, even after a finish like this, because I mean, like we said, 14th, 12th, 13th DNF. I mean, that just isn't good enough to have a permanent spot on your roster. So I mean, I'd say he's like top tier sub, but I don't know if I'd rush and pick him up over this one good finish.
Okay, I would agree. Um, Going back a little bit further, Seth Hamaker, who I have on my team, has been having some really, really good results. I ended up actually, I mean, we talked about this on the last podcast, but I bumped his prediction up from fourth to third because he's been doing so well. And then just a total stinker on this one, ninth place overall with issues and like a few of the different main events. Just not a good night for Seth Hamaker. I don't think that's representative of anything. I think he'll probably go back to the drawing board after that and come back really strong in the next one. But yeah, bad night for Hamaker.
I mean, like crashes really, really mess with you. I mean, your physical, mental confidence, all that stuff, and like he like finished third in the first race, so he was right back to where he has been all season in that third spot. But then he ate shit hard in the second race and ended up getting 14th, and then in the third race came out and like got a ninth. So I think that hard crash kind of shook him up a little bit. But I mean, just seeing like when he doesn't crash and he's feeling good, he got third. So I think that still I would be comfortable predicting him third or fourth next week. I think that that's where he should be even after one of these stinkers.
For sure. Yeah, and then Daxton Bennick, who I also have on my team back in 10th. I've been riding Daxton Bennick this whole season since, I mean, I picked him up for the first race and he got that podium, and it's been honestly disappointing mostly since then. Like, and he was up front. He got a whole shot in the first race and then went down. And kind of just had some issues and was just wandering around, the teens for a lot of the night. So, I don't know. Daxton's starting to worry me with his consistency. I mean, he's probably still doing good enough that I'm going to keep him on my team because there's no one, better than that I can swap him out for. But yeah, my prediction confidence is for sure going down. I've had him at 7 for the last while. This was a 10th overall in this one. And I may drop him down a little bit. He gets one whole shot, but usually his starts are bad, and he's had to work his way through the pack. And he's got good speed and ability to do that, but he's making a lot of work for himself. So Daxton Bennick on my team, probably looking at like an 8th place prediction moving forward.
I would maybe even back it up a little more because like 3 out of his last 4 races, he's got 10th place. I mean, so if you take like the first race out, because like sometimes people have like outlier races where just everything's kind of cranking, and there was that massive pile up where for all the good guys crashed, so he ended
Yeah.
up getting third. But like since then, 10th, 10th, 7th, 10th. So it seems like I would predict him around like 9th because like he like does have speed, and if he like rides a good solid race, he like should get better than 10th. But it just seems like the whole average finish. I would probably put him at 9th if I had him on my team.
Okay, fair. The only other real guy I wanted to talk about here in the 250 class is Max Anstey,
Yeah,
who
that
I mean, yeah, I think we had him second projection coming into this season, and it's just, I mean, again, like Tomac we were talking about earlier, but worse. I mean, the only time I think we saw him on the broadcast is when he's off the track and something's going horribly wrong. 13th place in a triple crown for Max Anstey. I mean, yeah, what do you even say?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that we had ranked second overall preseason, and he was my podium lock of the week, in like prior weeks, and he did like deliver on that. He like is a fast guy, but I just feel like after his bike dying on him last week, and then him kind of coming on the broadcast right after and saying, "Hey, this is my like championship. It's done, it's over." I mean, like he just lost all of his confidence, all the wind left his sails, And I think just kind of mentally, he's like given up and like really, he like does obviously want to do well and like wants to win and is like trying as hard as he can. But it's just when you're, I mean, just like so down emotionally on the whole thing and know what you worked for all off season was to win this championship and it just slipped out of your hands. I mean, he's not riding with that fire like he did for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about him as like an earlier podium pick. I mean, if we look at his season results, he had the second place in Detroit that first race, but just like we were talking about with Daxton Bennick, that was due in large part to the big pileup that took out a lot of the top contenders at the first corner. And then since then, it's been 6, 8. You know, his DNF that was a 21st in last week in Birmingham, and then 13th in Indianapolis. I mean, he's like this is like a 6th to 8th place prediction at this point for Max Anstey.
Yeah, for sure.
But okay, anybody else in 250 East you want to go over?
No, no, I think we're good.
Okay, so going into next week, we'll do some predictions for the next race. We're going back to West in Seattle, and actually, both of my picks for next week are in the 250 West class.
Mine too.
Starting up on the yeah, I kind of thought we'd be in line together on this one, but starting up on the podium, Levi Kitchen for a podium pick. Uh, he's looking so good. And if I actually pull up right now his season that he's had, third place, second place, a fifth in San Diego, but then first place, second place. He's had one race where he was off the podium, and that was San Diego. Again, I think that was one of our semi mutters that we had. So really confident in him being up on the podium and probably a second place prediction because I mean 3 out of the 5 races so far he's been in the top 2.
Yeah, and actually, Levi Kitchen is my podium lock of the week as well, Kelly. It seems like me and you are always on the same wavelength here. But also, what I love about Levi, I mean, along what like Kelly said, all true, but he has 3 main event hole shots. And like with the starts being so important, and he has the most hole shots, and it just shows that he is a great starter. And when you're a great starter, you are normally a like great finisher as well. And I mean, just him, I mean, from being fast, being consistent, and being a great starter, I mean, that is a podium lock right there.
Yeah. Now that being said, I mean, we have a super strong top 3 for the 250 West between Kitchen, Smith, and Hampshire. And honestly, any of them is a pretty good bet to be a podium lock for next week. I mean, unless something goes drastically wrong for one of them, we expect to see those 3 on the podium in one order or the other. But Kitchen has the most consistent record of all of them, and that's why he's holding on to the red plate right now, going back into West Coast racing. But Jordan Smith, 3 podiums, and the other 2 results were a 5th and a 4th, so no slouch there. And then Hampshire had a couple of worse races with 9th and 6th that are 2 mud rounds, but outside of that, 1-2-1. So
And like
I'm
Hampshire,
stoked.
yeah, like Hampshire is the only one out of those 3 that has 2 race wins. So I mean, obviously Hampshire knows how to win races. He just hasn't been as like consistent as the other 2. That's why he's like 3rd in points. But I mean, I think Kitchen with the number 2 prediction, he's either going to win or like finish behind either Smith or Hampshire for sure. He's the most consistent out of the 3.
For sure. Okay, who's your deeper pick for next race?
So my like deeper picks a little out of left field. He's like not one of the guys that you see and think, okay, this guy is definitely gonna finish in the top 10. But actually, my deep pick is Phil Nicoletti. Um,
Hmm.
he he like hasn't had the like best season because he had 2 races where he like DNF'd. He has 2 22nd finishes on the books this year, which is absolutely terrible. But like one of those was like no fault of his own. His like bike died, and then one was a crash. But his other 3 finishes, he got 4th in one race, 8th in one race, and 10th in the other. So like he is a top 10 guy when his bike runs or he doesn't, biff it somewhere. And I could just see like someone like him being a veteran and like kind of there to like pick up the pieces. Like if anything crazy happens up front, I would feel comfortable giving Phil a eighth place prediction next week. And I think that, if all goes like it should, he like should finish around that eighth spot.
Yeah, and I think that's a good prediction too, because he'll probably finish around there, or something will go drastically wrong, and you couldn't possibly predict him accurately, anyways.
Yeah.
So I like that. Mine is actually, I mean, even further out of left field right now because he hasn't raced a race this season. But Michael Moseman is coming back for this week. He just announced it on Instagram. He's on the Monster Energy Star Racing 250 team, and hopping back mid-season. Had a really bad season last year. They ended up ending with injuries, but Moseman's had really, really strong finishes in the past. It's going to be interesting to see where he shapes up, and where he fits in our 250 West standings here. But I have him tentatively predicted on my team as a seventh, as I picked him up. I actually got really bold and I dropped Julian Beaumer in favor of Michael Moseman. I put in Beaumer as a substitute. I'm kind of just holding on to those two, and we'll see what happens in qualifying of, make my final decision. But I do like Michael Moseman, and I love the Monster Energy Star Racing team.
Yeah, and like he should be substituted in like every league, and like he like for sure is available in like every league because he just announced he was going to be like added to the roster, so it's like he's there if someone hasn't picked him up already. So I mean, you should definitely sub him in, see how qualifying goes, and kind of feel it out from there. But he will do well, and I'd say for sure a top 10, from Mosiman.
Yeah, I mean, he should be picked up in every league, honestly, because he's for sure going to be a top. Four people in your league times three riders on everyone's team for 250 West is 12. Michael Mosen is for sure a top 12 guy. I just happen to have my bottom guy that I had was Julian Beaumer, who's great. Sixth place in our points right now. But yeah, check out Michael Moseman. I predict he's going to do well. But yeah, really stoked to go back to 250 West for Seattle. That's an exciting championship, as is 250 East. We'll see if anybody can take it to Jett in the 450s. But unless there's anything else, I think we'll wrap that up, and we'll see you guys next week.
Last thing I want to say is like if you like made it this far, please leave us a like on the like YouTube, or if you're listening on iHeartRadio or like anything like that, try to like the like video, follow us, and just do like whatever you can, because we are a smaller company trying to make it, trying to do these podcasts, trying to get our name out there, and every like and view and subscriber really, really helps us a lot more than the guys with 1 million likes already. So each like really does make a difference. So we appreciate you guys listening and, doing what you can.
Yeah, leave us a comment on YouTube. Look, we'll comment back. We're guys that work full-time jobs and run this fantasy site as really just a fun side project for us, because we're legitimate fans of the sport, and it's a really fun game to play, and we're excited to share it with other people. So yeah, reach out if you have any thoughts about anything we said. You have any comments? You want to talk some shit? You have any requests for features on the site? Hit us up. But yeah, social media, Speed League Fantasy, Instagram, Facebook, reach out there. We post our matchup results so you can see how we're doing in our leagues. Fun stuff. But anyways, that's all we got. We will see you for the next one. Peace.
Good luck.